The pharmaceutical industry, as an example, the Medicare prescription drug benefit, the person who chaired that committee in the House wrote a bill for the drug companies rather than for seniors, and then went out and now works for the drug companies. That's outrageous. And even with my own opponent, he chaired the Senate Insurance Committee, stepped away, and now sits on an insurance board that he's received over $250,000 for on top of his sheriff's salary. We've got to stop the revolving door. We've got to stop the ability for lobbyists to have the impact that they are having. I want to see a change, and that's what I'm involved in fighting for.
Sheriff.
Thank you. Well, I'm a 20-year lawman, so I know right and wrong, and I very clearly have a record of not only seeing it but acting on it. I put handcuffs on people. That's been my life. For 20 years, I put handcuffs on people that do wrong. I've spoke up very clearly when people do wrong, Republicans or Democrats. Foley situation absurd, and that ought to be fully investigated by an independent source outside of the Congress. Frankly, I don't think anybody trusts them to clean their own house. But recently we saw her leader, Senator Reid, who now has just made about $1 million on land that for years he hadn't even owned. I think she ought to return her contributions that she received thousands and thousands of dollars from him while he's under this cloud of suspicion, and she ought to call for an independent investigation, just like I did of the Republicans. There are victims in these situations. The victims in the Foley situation are kids. We need to remember who we serve and protect the victims. I've done that my whole life. They say oftentimes we need a new sheriff in town in Washington. You can send one there now.
Our next question is for Sheriff Bouchard from Peter Ross. Peter?
Sheriff, demographers have said that Michigan is perhaps the most racially segregated state in our nation. Why is that?
Well, that's a situation that's very much of concern, I think, to all of us. We want a state that's integrated, that works together. I certainly want a vibrant and core community area, whether it's the urban area that I was born and raised in, or at least born in, Flint. I was raised up and down the I-75 corridor, as many automotive families. But the city of Detroit used to go there a lot as a young boy. I'd like to see the city of Detroit develop and have a vibrant downtown. We need people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and do work specifically to help empower urban areas and work together across all racial demographic lines. When I was in the state Senate, I wrote a bill to revitalize aging urban areas, the principal shopping district bill. Got it done. We need people that are willing to do those kinds of things. First thing I'm going to do is call together the urban leaders and say, how can we get things done on a proactive basis? And that's what we need, in part, to begin to solve the solution. Opportunity is always the best antidote to poverty and to disintegration of the community.
Senator?
Thank you. This is a very important issue. Under the current president, we have no urban strategy. We've seen the president propose the largest cut in education in the history of the country for next year. Exactly the opposite direction which we need to go. $12 billion in cut in student loans right before Christmas last year that I strongly opposed. But let me take this opportunity to say that diversity is our strength. And I urge you to vote no on Proposal 2. It's incredibly important that we keep policies in place that keep doors open for everyone. Let me then just take one more moment and say to my opponent, you know, I wish that he would return every dollar President Bush raised and Vice President Cheney raised when they were in town for him, until they stop exporting our jobs, until they stop squeezing families on all sides. That's the kind of leadership we need.
Senator, our next question now. Do you support a path to citizenship for immigrants who are here illegally? Yes or no? And then please explain your position.
I voted no on the immigration bill that was before the United States Senate because it clearly went too far and would cost us jobs. I do think it's incredibly important that we have border security, and I've supported that, and that we have a legal system that works for everyone. And that is something that I have worked for as well and have supported. But my focus is on the jobs that we are losing in this state and in this country because of failed policies, because of policies that encourage a race to the bottom for a lower wage and losing your benefits, rather than saying we're going to champion those things that make it a race to the top.
Sheriff.
Well, another issue where she probably is well-intentioned but doesn't get it. Border security is a safety issue for me. You know, somebody asked me, what do I think about illegal immigration? If it starts with illegal, after being in law enforcement for 20 years, I'm going to be against it. It's that simple. But it's a safety issue, too. We know 52% of the people that were caught illegally in America in the last snapshot were those that had criminal backgrounds. We know there's been a 300% increase across our borders of countries other than Hispanic in nature, terror watch list countries. Meanwhile, she voted to build a fence, but then voted against funding it, then voted to fund it again. She can't pick a side of the fence. We need somebody that understands the problems and will address it head on. And to go back to the president raising money, 70% of her money has come from other states. Over 70%. The vast majority of mine come from Michigan. Talk about the need for reform. Who is she representing with that cash?
Another question for Sheriff Bouchard. Rachel?
Sheriff, everyone in Michigan is being hurt by high gas prices, especially this past summer where we saw some record highs. How do we get a handle on that? And should the government be taking a larger interest in funding alternative energy research?
Absolutely. Everyone's being hurt by the cost of energy, whether it's at the pumps or whether it's the cost to move goods and services or whether it's at the back of the plant where the meter's running at an extremely high rate of speed. I talked to a manufacturer. He said if they moved their facilities to the European theater, it would cut their energy cost about in half. If he moved it to a different part of the world, almost by 70%. That's a huge difference. Meanwhile, my opponent has filibustered time and time again the Energy Comprehensive Package, which had alternative fuels, alternative engines, alternative sources, R&D credits for alternative engines, all of the things that we need to look at to begin to grow ethanol, biodiesel, all of those kinds of things, and then recently voted for it, so that, depending on the group, she could be on both sides of that issue. We need somebody that actually sticks to a point, gets results, and moves things forward. So absolutely, Michigan could be in a position to bring down the cost of energy. She even voted against repealing the Clinton gas tax, which goes to deficit spending.
Senator.
Thank you. Energy independence, alternative fuels, bringing down the cost of gasoline with competition is absolutely critical. Let me just say, my opponent one more time is kind of all over the place. Let me just set the record straight on the facts. I've supported the energy bill that passed that has a 35% tax credit for building new ethanol plants. That's jobs for us. We've got 5 coming online. We've got 2 more for next year, and I think there'll be even more. We have biodiesel plants using soybeans. As a member of the Agriculture Committee, where I helped develop a new energy title, it's very exciting for